Hello students, and thank you so much for joining us today. And I would also like to thank Erica Woodall from Smart Start, who is here with us today to talk a little bit about advocacy. So Erica, take it away.
Now, Smart Start is North Carolina's nationally recognized and award-winning early education initiative created to ensure that all children enter school healthy and ready to succeed. In our community, Smart Start has a variety of programs that provides opportunities for young children to succeed by improving the quality and availability of care and education for young children, by providing support for at-risk parents to be better moms and dads, and by supporting, educating, and advocating for children ages birth to 5 and their families. And now this is a discussion about advocating and how we can advocate for early care and education, but before we get into the details of advocacy, I'm going to share some information with you that will help inform a conversation about early care and education based on current research and the impact that we know that high-quality early childhood experiences have both on children and their families and on communities. To answer this question, why so early, we have to recognize that the foundation for all future growth and development is built during early childhood. This is because most of our critical brain development happens in the first 5 years of life. The brain is one of the only organs not fully developed when a baby is born. And while brain cells are, of course, formed before birth, the connections, the wiring that forms the architecture of the brain happens largely in infancy and early childhood. To understand this a little better, it is important to understand that child development is a dynamic, interactive process that is not predetermined. It occurs in the context of relationships, experiences, and environments. Harvard University pediatrician Jack Shonkoff explains this by saying that brains are built, not born. Our brains are biologically prepared to be shaped by experiences. The most rapid period of brain development in a person's life occurs before they turn 5. Every experience a baby has forms a neural connection in their brain, and these connections, called synapses, form at a rate of up to 700 a second when children are very young. Synapses connect brain cells and form neural connections along which messages flow within and out of the brain. Connections that are used frequently are strengthened, and experiences that a child has frequently form strong neural pathways. Neural connections that are not used frequently are pruned and disappear. These neural pathways form the network in the brain that influences everything from intellectual capacity to problem solving to language, and they are formed literally based on a child's interactions with his or her environment when they are very young. And now we tend to talk a lot about academic skills, yet social and emotional skills are just as important, and the foundation for these attributes is also developed in infancy and early childhood. If a child is given safe and supportive opportunities to learn and to play, they learn how to follow rules, how to make up games with their own rules, how to function in a group, and the joy of learning through exploration. They also learn how to focus, filter distractions, and switch gears to go with the flow of life. Acquiring the early building blocks of these skills is one of the most important and challenging tasks of a child's earliest years. No one is born with these essential skills, but we have the potential to develop these capacities if they are nurtured from a young age. And later in life, these skills translate into honesty, team building, effective communication, conflict resolution, and positive attitudes. These attributes are skills we'd like our children to have, but these attributes are qualities that we need our coworkers, our neighbors, and our workforce to have. And a child's earliest experiences help determine these skills later in life. And so, to sum all of this up, there are only about 2,000 days between when a child is born and when that child begins kindergarten. And if we wait until a child begins kindergarten to begin educating them, we will miss the best opportunity we have to prepare them for success. But the good news is we know what works. We know that for a strong foundation, children need early care and education experiences that are safe and provide opportunities for learning, strong families, and environments that support healthy outcomes. And if children have access to these things, research consistently reveals that they are more likely to be successful students and to graduate from high school. They are less likely to become involved in the criminal justice system. They are less likely to rely on public assistance. As an as an adult and more likely to hold down a steady job and pay higher taxes, and more likely to contribute positively to thriving communities. To explain some of this in a little more detail, we know that third grade reading is an important indicator of future academic success, and children who are not reading proficiently by the end of third grade are more likely than their peers to drop out of high school. Fortunately, high-quality early education programs improve these outcomes. We've seen this in North Carolina. Duke researchers found that third graders have higher standardized reading and math scores and lower special education placement rates in counties that received more funding for Smart Start and more at 4, and that's currently called NC Pre-K, when those children were younger. And what is really significant about the study is it found that all children in the community were impacted, regardless of whether or not they were touched by an early childhood program directly. This is what is known as a spillover effect and demonstrates how children and their peers in elementary school benefit from the positive effects of high-quality early childhood education and evidence-based early childhood programs that improve outcomes for young children. High-quality early childhood programs also increase high school graduation rates by as much as 44%. And it is important to note that a 5% increase in male high school graduation rates is estimated to save North Carolina $153 million a year in incarceration rates. Additional savings are seen in reduced educational remediation cost and reduced healthcare cost. This graph shows Nobel Prize-winning economist James Heckman's research that found that dollars invested in early education have the greatest rate of return or a greater economic impact than dollars spent on education at any other time in a person's life. Now, I could speak for hours about the impact of quality early care and education and the importance of providing the tools and information families need to provide supportive, safe, and loving environments for their children to learn and grow. But in the interest of time, now that you have a little background on the importance of quality early care and education and the impact that this has in our communities, we're going to move into a discussion about advocacy and how we advocate. And so, what is an advocate anyway? An advocate is a person who supports or defends a particular cause that is important to him or her. And I want you to think for just a moment about things that you already advocate for. Maybe this is a better grade or fair treatment or a vacation from your job. If you have children of your own, you've probably found yourselves supporting them in a particular cause. And there are lots of things we advocate for. In addition to what I've already mentioned, you might also find yourself advocating for children's services, medical care, or insurance, services for disabled family members, community needs, peace, animal rights, local environmental protection. I want you to keep the things that you advocate for in mind as we move through this conversation. Now, I've mentioned this and just want to recognize that individual advocacy is important in our day-to-day lives, and it is advocacy that represents a single person, perhaps in a school setting, or helping to get someone services or medical insurance, for example. But we're going to spend most of our time today talking about policy advocacy. And policy advocacy speaks up for larger decisions that makes a collective impact and has the potential to leverage funds and policies that lead to systemic change. There are many opportunities to advocate. The most important key to being an effective advocate is just to do it, to speak out when there is a cause that we need to advocate for. This can be a phone call to your legislator, a letter to the editor offering comment at a local school board meeting, organizing a petition drive, or staging a rally at City Hall. Advocacy offers you a chance to share stories, information, and your opinion to influence public policy as we work to improve the quality of life in our communities. Advocates can influence policy legislatively by advocating to elected and appointed officials that vote on policy, law, and public budgets. Advocates can influence policy administratively by advocating to government institutions charged with implementing policies and budgets. Judicially, by advocating to our court system responsible for ensuring the constitutionality and appropriate interpretation and enforcement of laws. And don't forget that we can affect policy by advocating to the public. Our peers are responsible for electing our leaders and voting on referendums that create policy in our communities. When advocating to affect policy, it is important to be clear with yourself. about what you are advocating for and to be prepared. If you are reaching out to a public official, you might have a long list of items you want to communicate about, but if we attack our officials with huge lists of items, what they're most likely to do is just tune us out. So before you meet or reach out to communicate with an elected official, decide what one or two things are most important right now. And it is always helpful to research your official's personal background, relevant experiences, campaign promises, and legislative priorities. And so by that I mean their voting history. It is impactful if you can demonstrate how your cause plays a role in these items. If you're speaking with an elected official, know their record on programs related to your cause, including their voting record and public comments they've made related to these programs. Know your story and tell your story, but be brief. You might only have 2 to 3 minutes to make your case. So state your concern directly and be very clear about what you would like your official to do as a result of your meeting. If you're sending a letter or email, be brief and keep it to no more than 1 page. It is important to be positive and respectful and to use correct etiquette in addressing a legislator or official. For example, use their title of senator or representative when addressing them. Always be kind to their staff and connect at home whenever possible. When thinking about an approach to advocacy, articulating values and principles to an elected official and linking them to policy that might affect your cause is sometimes an effective approach. Values refer to a person's principles or standards of behavior and to one's judgment of what is important in life. For example, a few values related to early care and education might be all children deserve to thrive, or we want all children to be successful in school and in life, or families and communities are critical in a child's youngest days. And who can argue with these sorts of things? Who can argue with all children deserve to thrive? As you might imagine, it is more difficult to argue with shared values than it is to argue over your opinion of how an elected official should vote on a particular bill or topic. And I'm not saying not to bring that up in the conversation. That's the point of the conversation sometimes. But if we start with values, sometimes the conversation is a little easier to have. It is important when planning policy discussions that you base advocacy on values meaningful to you. The examples I've shared and that I will share are just examples to demonstrate this method of communication. So after you've begun a conversation based on values, link the values to the policy you are advocating for or against. For example, you might say, I know you understand and agree that the first 2,000 days of a child's life are significant to their lifelong success. This is why I'm asking you to support public policies that improve access to high-quality early care and education. Specifically, I would like for you to vote no on House Bill, and like I said earlier, list the House Bill number. That will cut funding for subsidized childcare in our community by, and if you have this information, provide this information, because it's always impactful to link your conversation back to an official's community, especially if you live in that community. Another example might be, I know from your voting history that you agree that all children deserve to thrive. I appreciate your support in the past, and I'm asking you now to support, and you can list the exact program, whether it be a parenting program or another program, because this provides resources and tools for parents that help them raise successful children with the skills to make good decisions and to be successful later. And this is another example. Again, I'm just providing examples based on values. Causes you might be advocating for and your values are specific to you. But just know that finding shared values and beginning a conversation talking about values is more comfortable and natural than jumping in immediately with bill numbers or complaints. We want our advocacy efforts to be heard. And if someone is defensive or agitated, they are far less likely to hear what we are saying. There are many ways to reach out to a public official. I mentioned some of these earlier. You might call or write a letter or send an email, attend a public forum or a school board meeting, or make an appointment to meet with him or her in person. If you are making a telephone call, you might end up speaking with a staff member, at least at first. And if you reach a staff member, ask to speak to the person to whom you are calling. If he or she is not available, identify yourself and tell the aide you would like to leave a message. It's always important when speaking with staff to be polite. Say, for example, please tell Representative, and state his or her last name, that I support or oppose House or Senate bill number and list the Senate bill number. You also want to state the reason for your support or opposition to the bill and ask for your representative's position on the bill. After you do this, you can request a return telephone call. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're reaching out to an elected official, know their record and voting history and refer to this if appropriate. And know your story and be prepared to tell it briefly. So now you've left a message for an elected official, and after you hear back from them, or even if you don't, you'll want to follow up with a letter. This can start with, "Thank you for speaking to me about," and go into details about what they spoke with you about. Or, "I spoke with," and provide their staff member's name, about, and then state your cause. And though I know you've been very busy and haven't had an opportunity to get back to me, I wanted to follow up to let you know. And then in this space, you might provide new information or additional information if that is available, or you might restate your position and always restate your request. These general guidelines can be used to write a letter if you haven't called first, or to craft an email, in addition to writing a follow-up letter if you have already placed a phone call or spoken to an elected official. I wanted to speak just briefly about how to reach out to your officials locally. If you are trying to find out who your officials locally are, and by locally I mean at the state level, you can look at the General Assembly website. This is a picture of the front page of the NC General Assembly websites. And I am bringing up these officials just because I want to point out that these guys are elected to represent us in the North Carolina General Assembly. So don't be intimidated by them or hesitant to reach out to let them know how their constituency would like for them to vote on a certain bill or topic. The state of North Carolina has an excellent informative website to help you stay informed about who is making decisions about what and how officials have voted in the past. And so this is a picture of the front page of the North Carolina General Assembly website. This isn't necessarily the easiest site to navigate, but it is kept current and provides access to each version of bills as they've been submitted, along with details about where they are in the process, with links to find out who is on the committee that the bill has currently been assigned to. And with each committee link, you can find out who the senators or representatives are on the committee currently reviewing a certain bill. So if you are watching a bill go through the General Assembly, you can pull up the bill by number. If you look up here in this search area, or you can pull up a bill by, for example, keyword, or by an item that you know to be in the bill anywhere. And so this is what I was saying. This is a very detailed website that provides a lot of great information for the citizens of North Carolina to help us stay informed about what is happening at the state level. I said this before, but to be effective advocates, we have to speak up. You can and should do this even if you're not an expert on a subject. Do your homework, be comfortable with your story, and know that it is okay if you don't have all of the answers. Keep in mind that it is impossible for elected officials to know everything about every bill they are voting on, so they might have questions for you to help them understand their cause better. If you don't have all of the answers, it is perfectly acceptable to say that you're not sure about an answer to a particular question, but that you will call them or email them back soon to provide them with the information they've requested. This is almost an added bonus because it gives you an excuse to reach out to them again. So be confident in yourself and your ability to be an advocate. The stakes are high, and every voice matters. I appreciate your time today. Please know that if you have any questions or concerns about anything I've said, you are welcome to contact me at SmartStart of Henderson County. Again, my name is Erica Woodall. My contact information is on the screen, and I am happy to provide additional information or resources about early care and education, and again, about anything that I've discussed today. Thank you.